Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet.
This week, I am coming to you from Detroit, Michigan, Motor City, a city with so much energy it created the Motown sound. Now, you might hear a little sound behind me. I'm actually in the hotel lobby, which hopefully this will work. So if you hear a little bit of conversation, a little bit of music, see an occasional person passing by, please don't worry about it. I'm just in the middle of where things happen. I actually wish there was a little plateau outside where I could show you the energy and hum of this city and still be on the hotel Wi-Fi. I'm staying at the 100-year-old Weston Cadillac Book Hotel. And honestly, it's one of those places where I swear the I-beams could speak. The architecture is classic with a newly remodeled twist, just like so much of this rust-belt city. Detroit is a city of rebirth. At one point, it was the richest auto manufacturing hub in the country. You know, people from every background from all around the world, mostly around the country, but some around the world, all sorts of ethnicities came here. They were drawn by opportunities outside of agriculture because for so much of our country's history, we had been agrarian. Here, the economy boomed. One of the promises of recovery was from the Depression, and it said a car in every garage. And Henry Ford aimed to fulfill that promise, and he did it right here in Detroit, Michigan. But in the second half of the 20th century, well, the bottom fell out. There were race riots, fuel embargoes affected the whole world, and there was overseas competition. A whole series of brutal economic shifts changed the entire landscape of American auto manufacturing. Detroit had some, to put it mildly, dark years. Its population dropped by 65%. Entire neighborhoods were abandoned and leveled. And eventually, the city ended up declaring bankruptcy. So, welcome, bucket listers, to another episode of The Imperfect Prophet. I'm your host, Wonder Wendy. I've got my morning coffee. I hope you have something to drink because it's always more convivial when we share a beverage. And I'm hoping the story that I'm telling you about Detroit, Michigan, might just feel a little bit like yours. Actually, I'm not hoping that, but I'm thinking it might. Because here's what I'm seeing in Detroit. This city is recovering. There are new apartments rising in the city's core. There's a thriving arts and food scene. Historic buildings, like this hotel, have been lovingly restored. Do you ever feel like you've gone through dark times? Wonder if you will ever recover? Because if Detroit can weather the loss of 2/3 of its population, bankruptcy, and decades of hardship, and still rise again, what do you think you can achieve? Yeah. Now, one of the many things women especially, but not exclusively, seem to let go of is their sex lives. Just the other day at my doctor's office, the fact that I still have a sex drive came up during a wellness conversation. She looked up at me and said, "We should study you. Too many of my patients seem to lose their sex drive after menopause." That really got me to thinking about my friends, about the conversations I've had, and how many of them have said exactly that. I've just lost my sex drive. Stick with me here because this does eventually connect back to the Motor City. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit. When I was in high school, I had a friend, actually the grandmother of a friend, who drove a diesel car. She was a lovely lady. We lived in Vermont, and the winters, well, they could be a little bit brutal. Now, the beauty of a diesel engine is that it is strong, dependable, incredibly fuel efficient. And if you take care of it, it will last for decades. But here's the catch. In the winter, diesel engines can be hard to start. Unlike gas engines, they don't have a spark plug to fire things up. I had to research this. That's actually a fact. They rely on the air in the cylinders being hot enough just from compression to ignite the fuel. But in sub-zero temperatures, that air is too cold, and the diesel fuel itself, the thing that's supposed to drive the car, can actually turn into a gel goo and clog the lines. That's why on the coldest nights, my friend would plug into what's called a block heater, basically an electric blanket to keep the engine block warm. So in the morning, it might actually start. And on the worst days, her grandson remembers standing there with a hairdryer, warming up the engine just enough to get that beautiful, solid machine to roar to life. And I can't help wonder, isn't our mature sex life a bit like that diesel engine? When we're younger, desire can be like a gas engine. You turn the key, there's an instant spark. But as we move through life, we may need, well, a little more warming up. That doesn't mean we're broken. It means we're built differently now. We need connection, care, and sometimes intentional preheating, if you want to call it that, to get going. But here's the most important part. Once a diesel engine is running, it's unstoppable. It's powerful, it's durable, built to go the distance. And ladies and gentlemen, so are we. And because life is so ephemeral, so fleeting, I'm going to give you one little caveat. If you meet an interesting person, get to know them and see if that's the warming blanket you've been looking for. I know a few women who have met great partners late in life. And while they were grateful for love and connection they found, the reality is that life is short. There's no getting out of it alive. And in a couple of cases, it didn't last as long as they would have liked. Their greatest regret that they didn't meet that partner earlier. They didn't have more time. So I'm not saying rush into something, but I'm saying be open to the possibilities that are out there. Don't look for the spark, look for the warming blanket. And as you start to feel things loosen up and get warmer, think about what is waiting for you. Interestingly, on the flight here, I watched a movie from a few years ago, early near the turn of the millennium, and it was called Something's Gotta Give. You remember that film? Diane Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Keanu Reeves, and Amanda Peet. Now, when I first saw this movie years ago, I watched it through the eyes of the younger generation. I was closer to Keanu Reeves' age when that was filmed. I'm still close to Keanu Reeves' age, but he too is older. Anyway, he played the charming young doctor, completely smitten with the very successful playwright Diane Keaton's character, Erica. And back then, well, I identified with his youth, his energy, and that sense of possibility. Now, it's a lot easier to see what that hot young stud would see in a woman of a certain age. Oh, and by the way, catching a younger man's attention is a wonderful boost to the ego. Even if you just flirt a little and then move on to the silver fox. Because now I'm closer to the age Diane Keaton was when that movie was filmed. And watching it from that vantage point, it's a completely different experience. Suddenly, I see the world through Erica's eyes. Despite the fact that she's a successful writer, she is, as I said, wow, why can't I say that? Despite the fact that she is a successful writer, that's a tough sentence to say. And she's a very attractive woman. She hides behind turtlenecks. She doesn't realize how young she still is, or how much potential she still has ahead of her. And then the surprise of discovering that love and passion can find you again when you least expect it. Now, if you haven't seen it or watched it in a while, like me, here's the gist. Erica is a successful playwright and in her 50s, and she's basically packed up a romantic life. She's divorced, that's done. She's friends with her ex. She's friends with her daughter. She's vacationing with her sister. Now, when she meets Jack Nicholson, who plays Harry, an eternal bachelor, maybe a little callous and shallow seeming, he always dates younger women. Matter of fact, early in the movie, Amanda Peet says, "She's not your type. She's over 30. Yeah. And because they meet when Erica's daughter, played by Amanda Peet, is actually dating Jack Nicholson. Now I watch that and go, ew. Anyway, at first, the dynamic is obviously awkward. She's meeting a man who's dating her daughter, and he's her age. Again, ew. But due to a hilarious bunch of things happening, he ends up staying with her after her daughter goes back to the city. And at first, their dynamic is extremely awkward. They're out of practice. Their rhythms don't match. There is that warming up period. Oh, remember discussing that? Where neither of them is quite sure how to do this anymore. But then something shifts. Erica opens up. Harry begins to truly see her, not as just passing time or someone past her problem, not as someone who she used to be or somebody he necessarily is sparked by, but as the woman she is now. And passion comes roaring back. And when it does, it's deeper, it's richer, more electric than those quick spark relationships they'd had before. Mm-hmm. And then there's the scene where Erica is in bed with Harry, laughing and crying at the same time because the emotions are overwhelming. That's what I'm talking about. Because midlife sex, like diesel engines, might need a little more warming up. And that's not always in the bedroom. Sometimes that's a long conversation. Sometimes that is a shared action. That's going fishing together or going to an art museum, finding things you can share, learning and growing together. And once you find that, it's beautiful and it's unstoppable. Now, I've talked about this in the metaphorical, the whole movie thing and everything else, but I've been there. When we're young, there's so much adrenaline and novelty. You're learning about your body, intimacy, stumbling your way through it, and hopefully you're discovering those lovely feelings with someone you care about. There's also this unspoken biological push. Our bodies are wired to reproduce, and that imperative fuels a lot of sexual drive. But as we get older, the biological push fades. The adrenaline quiets, and the reality in many of us, we start asking, why even bother? Especially if we have a painful or disappointing experience in the past or experiences in the past. It can feel easier to just shut the door, move on. But here's the thing. Intimacy at this stage of life is no longer about biology. Now we get to choose it because we want it, because it feels good, because it connects us to someone we love. Or just as importantly, it connects us to ourselves. Many of my peers, well, my age group, came into sexual awareness after the pill gave us reproductive control and before AIDS changed how we thought about STDs. You know, do you remember that famous Eddie Murphy sketch? You know, the one where he's wearing the red leather suit. If you're my age, you probably remember that. And he talks about how, you know, STDs, you used to get a shot, you get a pill, you'd be fine. And then AIDS came along and bam, He actually predicted that there would be an even worse thing that came along and it just suddenly explode. But, that was Eddie Murphy. And I'll let you go back and watch that for all of his lovely graphic language. During that time, between birth control and AIDS, there was a heyday of sexual freedom during those years. And now things feel different, more cautious, even clinical at times with testings and cautions for intimacy. Yeah, it can feel vulnerable. Sex isn't always neat and tidy. It can be messy, unpredictable, even a little awkward at times. But when we allow ourselves to open that door again on our terms, the rewards are profound. Emotional closeness, joy, physical pleasure that's often richer than what we experienced when we were younger. And that's why this matters. It's not about chasing youth. Although, if you chose to do that, no, not going to go there. It's about choosing connection, choosing pleasure, choosing to nurture a part of ourselves that's still very much alive. So, here's what I want you to take from this. You are not broken. You are not past your prime. Like Detroit, you may have gone through seasons that felt like everything was falling apart, where parts of you were neglected, abandoned, or, even left in the dark. But those seasons do not define you. And like that diesel engine, your desire, your passion, your fire, it might need a little more intention to warm up. Maybe that's time for yourself, emotional connection, or simply allowing your body the space it needs to awaken. But once that engine starts running, it's unstoppable, strong, steady, built for the long haul. Just like Detroit's skyline is changing again, you can rise again in your own life. You can choose to nurture this part of yourself rather than write it off. Your invitation for this week. Yeah, I'm going to send you off with a homework assignment. What block heater do you need to plug into? What's going to warm you and get that fuel moving through your pipelines again? What warms you up? Not just sexually, but in life. Ignite that spark in your brain. Warm your brain. Learn. Grow. Do what you need to do to expand yourself. And what small step do you take to reconnect with your own passion and pleasure? Because you, my friend, are not broken. You're a diesel engine. You were never meant to fizzle out. You are built for a wonderful life. Remember, that's a life full of wonder. Stop stopping and start looking for the wonder. Have joy and connection that run deep and last. So go ahead, warm up that engine, literally, metaphorically, however you want to take that, and hit the road toward the life you desire. I'm Wonder Wendy. I've enjoyed talking to you today from beautiful Detroit. Like any city, there are things, as I said to my husband, you walk down the street and there is the occasional alley that you hold your breath. That's a city for you. But it's rebirth. It's glorious. Look up and take in the art installations. Look at the vibrancy. Visit the old restaurants that have tradition and visit the new restaurants that bring an infusion to the city. This isn't just how to visit Detroit, it's how to live your life. And I look forward to hearing what you've done with my homework assignment this week. Find your block heater, find what warms you up, and look for those small steps. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next week, I'm Wonder Wendy. Talk to you soon.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation. Ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends, join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.